being recorded all day today, so all of these sessions are available after the event as well. So because we have so many sessions and so many tracks, there's no way you're going to get to see everything you want to see. So this way we get, everybody has an opportunity to log back in later and see what they missed. But we are here live with Randi. And Randi, I'm going to hand you over the baton or the microphone or the virtual speaker stick and let you jump in and give us a little overview on what we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gail. And before I keep going, can you let me know that you can hear me all well and good?
I hear you. You
awesome.
Look good.
All
you
right.
Sound good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Actually, for those of you who will be tuning in later on the recording, you will appreciate this. Perhaps you're a parent. Perhaps you are an aspiring parent, and you are thinking about what craziness and mess sometimes comes with that. You are tuning in to my new office in my brand new house. Where I haven't hung my art up on the walls because we just moved in a few days ago with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today. My name is Randi Braun. I am an executive coach, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Something Major and of a website called somethingmajorcoaching.com. Today, we're going to be having a conversation that is very, very near and dear to my heart, which is all about how you grow your career while you are growing your family. As an executive coach, it is something that actually got me into the coaching business. I joke all the time, I am the reluctant coach and the accidental entrepreneur. I started this business completely by accident as I was growing my own career while growing my family. So in terms of where we're going to go today, I'd love to tell you a little bit about my personal origin story. And then I'm going to talk to you about how you can do 3 things that I see in my coaching practice every day successful working mothers are doing to both grow their careers and grow their families, regardless of what phase of their career or in their family they're in. So whether that's you are the mom of a baby or you're expecting for the first time, perhaps that is that you have kids that are entering a new phase, or perhaps you are like me and you're dealing with how to parent and have a meaningful career all at the same time. So I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about my personal origin story. You know, what really got me so passionate about this is that how I started my business, like I mentioned, is, you know, really by accident. I had my 2 kids in 2 years and 6 days. And if you're joining us today, I would love to hear from you on the chat about how old your kids are. But I had my 2 kids in 2 years and 6 days, which was a little crazy in and of itself. And when I tell people this story, the crazier part to them is that in those 2 years and 6 days, I actually doubled my compensation, which really defies everything social science tells us should have happened to me with something called the maternity penalty. So maternity penalty is a phenomenon by which women's wages stagnate during their childbearing years, mostly because of a bias that we have in our workplaces and in our society, that mothers are less committed to their work. And so I started, you know, just talking about this with friends and sharing this story on panels here in my hometown of Washington, D.C. And what I kept hearing from women is, God, you're so lucky. Your story is so unique. And what really got me fired up is that I wasn't special, I didn't get lucky, and my story wasn't unique, but it also wasn't common enough. And so before I knew it, I was having coffees and phone calls and dinners and lunches with all of these women who I didn't know, trying to sit down with them and really understand what their motherhood goals were. And so with that, my business, Something Major, was accidentally born. And I can tell you today, I am growing my career while growing my family by coming to work every single day in a business I absolutely, positively love, which is my coaching business. And I'm growing my family by raising 2 kids under 4 in the midst of a pandemic. And I can tell you, I don't necessarily think that growing my family is something that's over. I also know it'll be iterative for me as my children enter new phases, and so does my business. And so there are a few things that I find that women can do regardless of where they are in their careers Perhaps you're on the cusp of stepping into your first leadership role ever. Perhaps you are on the cusp of a major promotion. Maybe you are treading water and you can't even imagine what it's like to go ahead and take the next step. And so I want you to all walk away today with a framework, which is all about getting intentional, getting aware, and getting tactical. Because regardless of where you are in your family phase, where you are in your career phase, these are three things that you can do in concert to grow your career while growing your family. So when it comes to getting intentional, I really want to challenge you to ask yourself this question. What is it that I really want? What is it that I really want? And for a lot of the women that I work with, they're almost struck by that question, right? Which is, I don't know what I want, or I want all of these things, or somewhere in between. And so, Gail, could we put up a slide of the matrix that we have for our participants? And so when we think about getting intentional, a lot of times we are, really knotting up and tangling up all of these different things we want for ourselves. We want certain things in our work lives. We want certain things in our financial lives. We want certain things in our family and our relationship lives, and we want certain things in our personal lives. And I want to encourage you to look at this, and I want to ask you, for those of you who are here today, when you look at this and you can actually untangle it and break it down into these four categories, are any of you brave enough to share some of the things that you want? What you want personally, financially, in your family and your relationships, or professionally? Because understanding these four quadrants is really, really key to get intentional about how you're going to grow your career and grow your family at the same time. Anyone brave enough to share?
Hey, I'll jump in. So I'm coming to this before actually having a family. I feel set in my career, but I still want it to grow. So what's interesting is what I'm trying to get out of this of when's that time right for me and how to make the most of it all. So I feel like professionally and financially, I feel set, but now I'm trying to do the family and relationship piece of it. So just want to throw in my perspective of this conversation.
I love that. And tell me, what feels important to you when you're thinking about, is now the right time, is now not the right time, what's important?
So it used to be finances, but I think that's just always going to be a thing. So for me, it's professionally of, do I need to be at a certain spot in my profession before I feel like kids are right? And that's why Gail actually in the chat said, she said, did the most when her kids were young and was a single mom. So I feel like that's really inspiring of, you don't need to be at a certain spot necessarily. So I'm curious where we'll go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head, Christina, which is there's no right or wrong time. I mean, I hate to speak in absolutes. There's rarely a right time or a wrong time. I have never, in all of my years, both as a working mother myself and in coaching other working women, have ever talked to anyone who's like, man, I really timed this at exactly the right time, right? And so what happens is when I see women, usually what happens is they come to me and they're in a state of analysis paralysis, perhaps when they're like you and they're thinking about having a family, is that they get it all tangled up. And we get into this place of overanalysis of, so when should I? What do I need to do first? What are my prerequisites, right? And so that's why what ends up happening is we get all these things knotted up. And we can't see it clearly because in order to create a life that feels integrated, we have to kind of clear the fog and disentangle all of those knotted up threads, right? Like if you could think of a metaphor, it's almost like, like when your jewelry chain on that necklace gets all tangled up. And it's like, you just know that it's this big knot. You know it's going to take time to figure it out, but you honestly have to sit there and unthread it. And so as we think about these things, it sounds like you have the professional unlock. Financially, you're like, okay, I know what my goals are. They're always going to be important to me. And really thinking about, how do you want to build around these four quadrants at the same time, right? And really getting specific about mapping out what your goals are. So I heard from you professionally, what's important to me is I want to grow. I heard financially, there's a certain earning level that's important to you, right? And I heard that I want to have kids at some point. What's something that's important to you, Kristen, personally?
My biggest personally is just being able to travel, I would say, and just having that kind of aspect of what's that hobby, and for me it's traveling. So kind of keeping that to my core of that's who I am. So
Absolutely. And I feel the exact same way that you do, by the way, which is I always loved to travel before I had my kids. I can tell you my kids have been to Europe, my kids have been to Hawaii, they've been to Vermont, to California, to New York. I take my kids everywhere they go, everywhere we go, or at least we used to, right? And so as you're thinking about this, there's no right or wrong answer. But again, we want to talk about today, how do we get intentional? How do we get aware? And how do we get tactical? And so for those of you who are joining, I want to encourage you to like screenshot this maybe and do a little bit of journaling here, right? Because there is no right or wrong. But when you think about growing your career and growing your family, it's all about scaling fulfillment. And the happiest working moms I know are the working moms who feel fulfilled in both their personal and their professional lives. Now listen, there are times where sometimes we're in a really big push at work. There are times where sometimes we're in a really big push on something in our family and relationships. And the reason I don't just say kids in that bottom right quadrant is because family and relationships are a part of this. Some of you might be single moms. Some of you might be partners. Some of you might be caregivers, to other members of your family. And my guess is that some of you have relationships and friendships in your life that are really core to filling you up. And so as you think about getting intentional, it's more than you can do today. But I wanted to ask yourself a few core questions around this kind of workshop diagram here, which is, what do I want? What do I have today? And what do I want to aspire for? And this is going to be the basis for some really, really fantastic journaling to think about what intentionality can look like to you. Gail, if we could take the slide down for a second. The second piece of this is really about how we get aware. And what I mean by that is really getting objective about the facts on the ground, opportunities and obstacles, and stories that we're telling ourselves. So Kristen, I want to invite some of our other colleagues here to join the conversation. You asked a question I hear from women all the time when they're thinking about having kids. When should I do this? And as you think about how you can get aware, right, you've gotten intentional, you're thinking about what some of your goals are, you're building what that blueprint could look like. As you're getting aware, really thinking about this idea of stories you tell yourself. So I'm a huge believer that when we come from a place of should, it's a place where we are weighed down by expectations and stories we've told ourselves about what we need to do or what other people expect from us. When we come from a place of could, it's a place of what we could do that is aspirational, in sync with our hopes and dreams, in sync with our goals, and oftentimes challenging some of our fears. So I want to invite Kristen, you, Shannon, and the other members of our group today. What are some stories that you've told yourself about working motherhood, whether you're a working mom or not? I know we have a mix.
I think there's always the idea that working moms should be able to do everything, right? The super mom. I'm not going to live up to the, I didn't bake the homemade cupcakes for the room parents, and we have to do everything. And that it's such a great irony to me because we live in this era of equality and our husbands were raised to be great co-parents, and yet as mothers we still feel the burden of taking all of the heavy lifting of child rearing, and that's really, really hard.
Yeah, that is awesome, right? I hear that all the time. Moms comparing themselves to other moms, right? Which is like, why? And Gail, when Gail emailed me and said she was going to be the room parent for this session, I just laughed. My kids' school emailed me the other day, they're in a new school, do you want to be the room parent? And I said, no, thank you, right? Those are my limits about saying yes and saying no to things. What are some other stories, Shannon, and Kay, help us understand what are some of the stories you told yourself about what you should be doing as a working mom. And I'd invite you to share where you are in your motherhood journey. I know we have a huge range of moms here of kids who are 21 and people who are thinking about becoming moms for the first time.
Yeah, hey guys. I don't know if you can hear me okay. There's a glitch on my end, but I think it's my system. Okay, cool.
You look good.
So I have 3 children. They are 14, almost 15, and a freshman in high school, 12 and 7th grade, and 11 and 6th grade. And so we are busy and we don't stop. They all are in sports and clubs and all the things. And I often find myself struggling because I am one of the only working moms in my friends friend group. We live in an area where I would say majority are either working mom or stay-at-home mom, or they're in things like real estate or things they can kind of make their own schedules and put down if need to. And so I often feel guilty that I'm not the mom that's making all the cups or doing all the crafts or sending these, massive, beautifully created t-shirts and that's all I can do to just
Shannon, I think we're hearing a little bit, I think we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. What I did get is that, what I'm hearing from you is you are one of the only moms in your community who has a full-time, less flexible job, right? You're not in real estate, making your own schedule. You have 3 kids at tough ages, and you feel the guilt sometimes. And that guilt is a great invitation to get aware. And as you're thinking of growing your career while growing your family, whether you are trying to put your feelers out, like I said, because you're thinking about having a kid, or you're like Shannon and you have kids all the way in high school and middle school, I want to invite you to reconsider guilt. Now, a lot of times when I talk to moms about guilt, they are either totally sucked into a myopic worldview and just let themselves feel like a failure, or they see guilt and they just shove it down and try and push it away. And what I want to invite you to think about as you're thinking about guilt, as you feel that coming through for you, is to really say to yourself, again, this is a great invitation to get aware. What's making me feel guilty? What do I feel like I'm missing? How do I think other people are seeing me? And most importantly, how do I want to see myself? And so when you start to see guilt or hear guilt, we can never turn off that voice of guilt. What we can do is turn down the volume, right? We can acknowledge it, name it, and try and turn down the dial. And the way that we turn down the dial is by turning up the volume on our authenticity and our needs. So I invite you to do some journaling. What does being a good mom look like to me? What feels important to my kids? What feels fulfilling for me? How do I know I'm doing what I should be doing at work? And what starts to happen is when we think about how the other moms see us, how work sees us, how our kids see us, sometimes we lose sight of how we see ourselves. And so as you're thinking about growing your career while growing your family, I want to invite you to put yourself at the center of your world. Sometimes as working moms, we tend to put everybody's needs before ourselves. We put our kids' needs before our needs. We put our family needs before our needs. We put our work needs before our needs. And actually, when we take the time to put our needs first, and really going back to that quadrant, understand what it is we want personally, what it is we want professionally, what it is we want financially, and what we want out of our family and relationships. We don't just grow our careers, we don't just grow our family, but we do so in a way that is so meaningful to us. And I call it the authenticity dividend. When we invest in the things that we are authentically excited about, when we optimize for joy and excitement, when we prioritize our goals, we get so much further in our careers than when we just work to mitigate weakness or minimize stress. We don't want to play whack-a-mole on all of the things we have going on in our lives, right? That's not the game I want you playing in the arcade. I want you sitting at that big race car game, right? You are at the driver's seat. And how we sit at the driver's seat is how we get tactical. So once we are aware about stories we're telling ourselves, once we're intentional about what we want, that's when we start activating all of our levers, right? These are the conversations we're having with internal stakeholders inside our organization about that promotion we want, about that job we want, about creating boundaries in our work schedule in a COVID-19 world, about when we will and won't be accessible. and what our colleagues can expect from us in this crazy pandemic stretched-too-thin world. It's how we communicate. So people pick up what we put down. So when you're apologetic about your kids, people pick up that you don't feel confident about who you are at work. And so there are 3 words as you are navigating work as a working mom that I want you to abolish from your vocabulary. They are I think, I believe, and I hope. You will never grow your career when you own your career conversations with those 3 words. I think, I hope, I believe. I want you to reframe with 3 words. I propose, I suggest, and I recommend. And so as we think about how we get tactical and how we start thriving, it's about having conversations about telling people what our goals are. It's about raising our hands. So what if we're going out on maternity leave? So what if we've been home, virtually schooling 2 kids? You've been doing amazing work. It's about telling that story at your performance review. It's about sitting down with your boss and having a conversation about what you want. And that conversation starts here. It starts by being unapologetic with yourself about what you want out of your career. It starts about being unapologetic with yourself about what being a great mom means to you. And scaling that across every element of your professional life and your personal life, your professional relationships and your personal relationships. And so with that, those are some of my tips for how you can grow your career while growing your family. I want to answer your questions and get your thoughts because I want every single one of you who are joining here today and listening to this recording to feel like it's not about having it all. It's about having a life that brings fulfillment and meaning to you. And those are 2 different things. So I'm going to pause here. And Gail, while we take that Q&A, can we put the contact me slide up on in case people are watching this on a recording and they either feel like they want to get in touch with me after. So I would love to open it up. Kristen, it sounds like, were you about to raise your hand?
No, I think it was so great. I just want to be best friends with you so I can give you a call in the middle of the night. But no, it's great. As I said, as I'm leaning into this next part of my life, it's been good to have the reminder because I think just even where I'm at now, it's hard not to compare myself to my friends who have kids or anything else like that. And it's hard not to compare. And I think this was a good reminder of be yourself and everything else. So loved it.
I love that. And you can hear there's life isn't perfect. You keep hearing some background noise pop up in the background, right? I mean, this is COVID. I am trying my best, just like we're all trying our best, right? And Kristen, one of the things I want to invite you and, anyone who's watching on the recording who are looking for a little bit more of this, all of my contact information is here. I have a few articles on somethingmajorcoaching.com about digging deeper into this get intentional, get aware, get tactical framework about working motherhood. I'll also be doing a more formal workshop version of this content in a few weeks for Ladies Get Paid. So you can go ahead and find that online or email me for that information. But what I want to leave you all with today is that growing your career while growing your family, so many of the times that I talk to women, they get so focused on what the external obstacles are, right? We all know about the pay gap. One of the things that you might not know, which is a horrifying statistic, is that working moms make as little as 69 cents on the dollar compared to working dads. When men, have babies, their social capital goes up in the workplace. When women have babies, with the maternity penalty, they actually have to prove, Harvard research shows us that they have to prove they're doing the work. And so one of the most toxic myths I hear when I talk to women, whether they're women like Shannon, who have kids in middle school and high school, whether they're women like Kim, who have kids in elementary school, or Kristen, whether they're women like you who are thinking about having families, is that we start to go down this rabbit hole of, God, is the juice worth the squeeze? Am I just going to get rejected if I go for that promotion? Is it worth interviewing for a new job when I have it so good here with the flexibility I have? And what I want you to keep doing is the way you're going to grow your career and grow your family is being real with yourself about what it is that you want and getting aware with yourself about what stories you're telling yourself that might be holding you back, and then getting really tactical. Be active in your networking internally and externally. tell great stories about yourself and take credit for the work that you do inside your organization. Build relationships in your industry. Create opportunities for yourself to live your dreams, so that, you know, external obstacles are going to be there, just like they are there for anything that's worth doing in our life, whether we're a working mom or not, inside and outside of work. And it's really about thinking about starting inside, getting clear on what we want, and scaling that across every element of our external life, personal and professional. So I think we have time for one or two more questions or comments. What's on people's mind right now?
Randy, this is a great presentation. I think one of the things I love to see when people do is share in their networks, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, when they are working for an employer that's being really good about helping support working moms. I've come from a company that has been amazing with working parents, and I've talked a lot about that on my Instagram page, or on my, on my LinkedIn page, because I want other people to see that, but I also want the company to see and feel recognized for it and understand that what they're doing is important and they need to keep doing it. And so I think we need to also kind of enforce that positive reinforcement with companies when we're seeing them doing the right things. And I'm hoping, I mean, as horrible as COVID is, it's going to force some companies to reevaluate how they treat working parents, how they treat work at home parents, when the CEO of the company is at home dealing with the same things Kim is dealing with a teenager who doesn't want to be studying. All of a sudden they have a very different understanding on what working parents and working mothers especially are going through.
Absolutely, Gail. You know, one of the things, you hear all these stories on news about, you know, a recession, about a really difficult job market and COVID. And one of the things I'm seeing as someone who works with both individuals and organizations is that for all those stories on the news, like, people are seriously voting with their feet. And I'm seeing a lot of working parents who are thinking about actually switching jobs amidst COVID, right? Because it's more important than ever. And at the same time, it's more challenging than ever. You know, Fortune reported that 14% of women have considered quitting their jobs since the pandemic began. That research was out in April. Some people are calling this the she session, about how this is a double whammy kind of recessionary event for working mothers. And I just want to let all the women in here know, and who are watching, if you feel like this is a really challenging time, there's nothing deficient or wrong with you. This is an extraordinary difficult time. And that's why I want to encourage you to get back to what is important to you. Because it's not enough to just give your all at work right now. It's not enough to give your all to your family. If you are trying to do all of those things all the time, you're going to run yourself ragged. And so I want to encourage you, filling up your own tank, that self-care, being clear about what your priorities are. That is what is going to help you grow your career and grow your family and prevent you from burning out in the next 6 months or 6 years.
Great. Randi, we've really appreciated your presentation. It's been awesome to get to know you, hear about your perspectives. And again, this session has been recorded. It'll be shared with our attendees who couldn't join us in here today. But I wish everybody a great afternoon. You're welcome to stay in this room. We've got more sessions coming up. You can go back out in the hallway. Remember, you can poke into any rooms. We've got open conversations happening in the cafe space, so you can go grab a virtual cup of coffee and join some of your other attendees there. So for everybody, thank you so much for joining. It's been great to have you here. Randi, thank you again for your time. It's been a great session. Thank you.
Thanks, Randi.